And that's it for the stack. It's time for the next section, which is my favorite section because you guys make it up. It's your audience questions, and for that, we're going to get a booth bag.
Morning.
Oh yeah, Boothman lives in the booth. That's his superpower.
It's hard times, man.
Yeah, it is.
So our first question was tight. So I have to ask it, or things will happen.
Did someone threaten?
I can. For Dan, your thoughts on the cancellation of She-Hulk and the new Savage She-Hulk?
The new Savage She-Hulk that's coming out is a mini, and it's going to be by Fred Van Lente, so right there it's immediately brilliant. So everyone should pick it up, because Fred is just one of the best artist working writers out there.
We had him on the show last week, and man, he really talked you down.
I don't care if it's a one-way street. As far as the cancellation of She-Hulk, it's not like the character's dead. She's walking around, she's doing stuff. She's not in a book anymore.
She's in the summer.
That's not being in a better place.
Maybe she could be a mighty Avenger at some point.
Next question.
All right. If you ask the question, raise your hand.
Yep.
He's going to bring you a present.
Hooray!
And next question.
This is for Heidi. Can small publishers survive Diamond's new solicitation rules, and how? And this is from Matt.
Well, it depends on, just to...
Tell the story.
Yes, the story. The story is that Diamond, which is the big distributor of comics, actually almost a monopoly, decided to raise the minimum amount of that they would have to make on every issue of a book they carried in order to carry it. And they raised it from $1,500 to $2,500, which doesn't sound like very much, but that is a lot. That is a lot of money. And will small publishers survive this if they publish pamphlets? Probably not. It's going to be. It's very difficult for people for companies that publish. Are we off the record here? I mean, it's like
He's recording for
I
them.
know exactly. I would say
duty.
that it's on the record. I mean, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that are putting out William Shatner comics. You know what? Those have never worked. And we're not going to work this time.
What happened?
None of those Star Trek Gold Key comics, they never sold.
Well, though he didn't write them.
Oh.
Yes. So, I mean, I just picked that out of the hat.
Now I want to see a Boston public, like, no.
Well, tell IDW that's their game. But I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And I've talked to a lot of publishers, and it's going to be very, very difficult for them to survive because a lot of books weren't already making that much money. And I think it's actually probably we need to trim the catalog a little bit. And I think things that survive will be good. I think things that survive will have an audience. And at some point you just have to say, who's reading this book? And if it's just you, I know a lot of people who just want to get their book out there and don't think they'll get it through Diamond, and it's not going to happen anymore. So I think it's a little reality check for a lot of people at this point.
Are we going to see a rise of a secondary company, that probably already exists, a smaller Diamond?
There is a Haven, a company called Haven, that's a distributor, and they say that they're going to pick up a lot of the slack. So, I mean, that's great. I'm not saying,
Do you think more people will go to the web?
to the web, yeah, but people already are going to the web, and they're already finding an audience on the web, and then they're putting out a bigger book with a higher price point. And if you're putting out a collection that it costs more, it's much easier to make that minimum. And that's just the way it is. You got to build your audience on the web now, or the web head. But
There was an article in the Times today that covered this.
Yes, they even made the New York Times.
The old gray lady. And it ended saying that someone who ran a website was like, I'm going to try to help distribute books and try to get people to go through me and kind of distribute on a very small scale and see if that could eventually turn into another.
Everybody brings up Bone as an example of a book that wouldn't have made it under this. Bone is a book by Jeff Smith. It sold 2.5 million copies now in paperback through Scholastic. And when it first came out, it sold only a few hundred copies. But Jeff was a genius, and people caught on to it. Now, not everybody is a genius like Jeff Smith is, but if you I think people out there really think, I think you have to think about it. You have to think, who is going to read this book? Who wants, you're looking at these books from Marvel and DC. and
Great books from
Great
Marvel.
books, great books from Marvel and DC. But, those have an audience because they have characters, but not everyone does. Not every book is of that level of craft. I hate to say it. You gotta learn how to connect with an audience.
Well, Boston Public Comics did make the stack this week.
There you go, that's the challenges out there. Cool.
Raise your hand if you asked that. Pete's gonna bring it in, and we have time for one more question.
What is the most well-done superhero death ever?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, clearly it's Cypher from New York.
Gotta talk about riots in the street when he died. Certain panic.
Well, that's for me.
I would obviously I'm going to say Captain America, just because I really like the fact that after he died, the comic went on without him, and it did such an amazing job of building the world that he helped create, and all the other characters, and it was so great because I wouldn't say you didn't miss him, but it was just so cool the way it kept on. It wasn't like, we're going to bring him back. It's all about, oh, let's just throw a mask on this guy, throw a shield on this guy. It just, I did it classy in a really good way that made me proud to, read the comic.
I don't know. It's tough because any good death gets cheapened once they bring the character back. It's like, oh,
Well, in
wasn't that
general,
good?
I think, an argument could be made that there have been no important character deaths since Gwen Stacy, almost. Since that was the first really big one where there was a character who, I'm sure they will bring back at some point, but
No.
that was, never.
No. We all linked arms. They wanted to bring it back.
Really.
And when we came on after One More Day, we had a meeting and they told us what was happening in One More Day. And they said, we've been arguing back and forth about Gwen Stacy. Do you guys want her in your book? No, and leave the poor girl in the ground. She's had like 5 different attempts to bring her back, where clone, kids, it's just over and over again they've tried different ways, and this is her, yes.
At some point, you have to have a story that really touches you like that with Gwen Stacy, and to say she died. They just killed Batman, and
That doesn't sound real.
Twice. They killed him twice.
They killed him twice
Yeah.
in different ways, so they, bludgeoned him to death like a baby seal. But,
Someone on the internet do that. Put a little bat cowl on a baby seal.
They burnt that baby seal.
It's the scariest show ever.
it's like, who really thinks Batman is dead?
He's dead.
But you're absolutely right, though. I mean, I guess that's what I'm kind of saying with the Gwen Stacy thing, is that after that, every character has come back. And the more times...
Uncle Ben?
They brought Uncle Ben from an alternate dimension back in Peter David's run.
Peter David regretted doing that story. He told us on the show when he was on. He was like, it never worked. And I think it's because it was like, I made fans uncomfortable because it's like, this is the one guy you can't bring back.
Before he wrote that was like, you keep notes of like stuff you want to do. I so wanted to have like an Uncle Ben comes back story, and the minute Spider-Man sees it, it's like, no, and finds Mysterio and beats the hell out of him.
Yeah, right.
I want to do that like in one issue. But then Peter beat me to it. So for me, it's because I know you said Gwen Stacy. For me, as a young reader, the death that affected me the most was Captain Stacy.
Yeah.
That was Spider-Man's like second father figure, and he died. And it was, when you look at the comic, it's Spider-Man's fault. He's the one who shot Doc Ock with that stuff that made the arms go crazy. And I remember reading that and being really affected by that as a young kid, and that stayed with me. That death. But on the DC side, when the original Doom Patrol died, and the series just ended.
Yeah.
I was, what about when they killed Jason Todd and everyone called in? Everyone pushing their buttons like they were killing him.
What about Hitman?
Hitman.
But
It didn't move us, sorry.
Who?
Did that move you?
It was tragic. Thank you. For months.
Cool.